Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin from Florals.com and welcome back to the Falling Back to Basics series. And today we're talking about more go-to designs. So last go-to design episode we covered our beautiful L-shaped design, which is one of my favorites, especially since I take so many single horizontal and single vertical photos that need to go on the same page together. But today this is mostly for people who love to take one or the other, so we're kind of switching it up. But this is what I call the stacked design. This is the way your photos are oriented, again, in a stacked position. So one of these layouts follows it perfectly, another one's a little bit off, which you'll see in all the examples here today, that essentially your photos sandwiched together one way or another. Usually the long sides are touching, but I have done a few layouts that I don't have here. Couldn't really find them. Lots of sifting through layouts. You can only find so many before it gets so repetitive that you just want to put albums away. But you could also stack your photos 2 by 2 vertically or horizontally. So it's really up to you, but this is one of my favorite designs. I think it's easier to do paper layering this way. I think it's easier to do embellishing this way. It sort of blocks your photos into one section so that they're the main focus and there's not two main focuses. So this is why I tend to go to this design. Even on double pages, I have a stack here, and then I have a stack here, and then there's this free floating thing over here. Which actually, when I took this out of the album, this whole photo was actually off the page. Isn't that crazy? This adhesive is not even fighting. Okay, now it is, but like I found it popped off the page, so I need to re-glue that. But it was more so up here, I think, in the original. You guys probably remember this one. This was from the Summer of Stories series. I know I have a lot of those in my examples. Just happens to be I haven't put any of those away yet, so they're all still here. But what's common in the stacked one, like I said, usually my longest sides of my photos are touching, but you'll see some examples where they're not the longest sides. And this is a really simple way to do it. This is one of the simpler layouts I have, but essentially I put these two photos together because they're vastly different, but they go together well because they're part of the same story. When we went to the top of the world in Baltimore Harbor, and I wanted an easier way to layer. This was for a challenge of a mini kit that we had, so I needed to stack these photos, but I didn't have a lot of papers, so just doing one paper layer around both of them helps bring them together, helps seal the story. And if you notice here, I could have stacked them the other way. There would have been no fault in that. I would have just had to move my cluster around so it didn't cover my face. But the reason I did that was because we have blue sky, and then we have blue sky and blue water. If I were to put the water photo up here, then it would have flown right into the blue sky and been a little bit weird eyesight line-wise, whereas this one's, you know, the eye level dark contrast here, because it's buildings, moves into the next photo flawlessly because it doesn't drip into the other photo, it's divided from the other photo. That's a personal preference. If you want your photos to flow a lot more, put the light colors together and they'll flow a ton more. But as you can tell between these two, same similar stack style, a little bit off center, which I know it's hard to see because we're so close, but a little bit off centered. And then there's a cluster, a main cluster, then usually a main cluster on the opposite side. So here we have one down here. I would consider this a smaller cluster, but then we have a major one up here. So it kind of helps enforce that diagonal line of sight you often want on your pages, and the easiest way to make a visual triangle is by doing a diagonal. In my personal opinion, it then makes a very obtuse triangle, but a visual triangle nonetheless. Here's an oldie but a goodie. I don't know if you guys remember this one, but this is one that I made. Was I still in school when I made this? It can't be. I think I made this when I lived in Maryland, but this is when I graduated, and I thought it was so fun. And this was in a recent flip through as well, but I think it was so fun to do stitching by hand in my handwriting. One of the coolest techniques I still have ever done, and I do have a video on that if you're interested. Really easy to do, but they're stacked together. In this case, I used 2 pieces of a paper pad, a 6x6 paper pad, to create a joint layer between both of them. Nothing too crazy, but we have 2 clusters sort of balancing them out, and then the title finishes it off. So this one's a little bit different, but I really like stacking them off center as well. I think that adds a lot of interest. And what comes with stacking also comes the triplet. If you print 4x6 photos like I do, which I do a lot, and by a lot I mean always, I usually have 3. If they're all the same orientation, perfect. I either put them 3 vertically or 3 horizontally. That's just how they always end up. I think it usually works better. Sometimes I do a grid style, which you'll see when we talk about grid styles later on. But what's really, really nice about this is it separates the layout. It gives it breathing room because your eye will work down, stop, take it in, work down. So you're working with almost like thirds or, you know, 3 chunks of a layout versus this, where you have this free floating thing. This automatically has your photos grounded because they're touching the sides, they're grounded. Now what's really nice is to build off that grounding and to ground your embellishments off your photos. So if you do have a triplet, or however many you can fit in a line across your page or up and down your page, grounding your photos first by making them touch the sides or having them on top of a paper layer that touches the sides will ground your photos. Then you can build off of those with some free floating abstract clusters like I did on this one. Like this one's a free floating cluster, I would say, but it attached onto this craft paper, which is grounded by the photos because they're the ones that are attached to the background. Because if these photos weren't here, everything would be floating. I mean, this washi tape helps a little bit, but it won't save your layout or anything. So I really, really love doing it with 3 photos. Now I will say I don't think I've done it with more than 3 photos. If I had to guess, I need some more adhesive, but 3 photos is probably my max. Obviously you usually need more than 1 photo, but you can definitely do the stacked method with other things. Again, I don't have an example, but you could do a photo and then 3x4 cards to finish off the rest of it. So think outside the box when it comes to these ideas. You can definitely replace things with other things. So if you had if you only had 1 photo, a journaling block the same size, and then you're stacking them. It can work, I promise. I don't have examples because I always have too many photos, but I promise it happens. This one's something I do so often. If you're like me and you like to think your album page, when I'm thinking about my page, I think it's often going to be on the right-hand side of my album. And I've talked about this before. Since we think that the dominant side is usually the right side, just based on, usually if you're left or right-handed, I'm right-handed. So I think that the page is typically going to go on the right-hand side of the layout. So I often put the weight on the left-hand side of the layout, just so it balances out when you're flipping through. The weight's in the center of the album. It makes sense to me. However, if this was on the left side, it seems so heavy out here that how is your eye ever going to move across to the next one? That's a personal problem that I have for weighting the left-hand side, but as you can see here, we have these very basic layers underneath this photo, a pink diagonal stripe, a pink floral, and then a green matching all the way around to really bring those 2 together. Now they're one piece. And now you're embellishing apart from one piece. So now that you're working with one piece as if it were an 8x10, as if it were one 4x6, you're treating it the same way, except you're using 2 photos to kind of make them congruent with each other. Squishing them together, whether they're touching this way or this way, then you're only embellishing around one subject matter, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. This time we've got another triple stack. We did simple layering on this one, if you guys remember this process video for the Summer of Stories. This one sheet of paper here was one 6x6 sheet of paper that I cut into strips to make it look like it was a 12x12 behind there. But now that we have these photos grounded, they're one piece. Now you're embellishing around one piece instead of thinking about embellishing around 3 photos. Hopefully that makes sense. Now I do have some variations of what I would call stack technique. They're a little bit out there, but you can picture it. This is kind of thinking outside the box. First we have this one. Now this is an example where 2 photos, a little bit of space, and then we have a journaling spot filling the other space. But since they're on a piece of paper that's grounded to the outside edges, stacked. These 3, kind of stacked. We can take it that way. This is really just up to you guys, defining your own designs, finding what you like to do. Of course, these are all great ideas. Everyone has great ideas, but they might not work for the photos that you have. If you're a person who likes to put 5 photos on a pages, a lot of these won't work because I like to work with larger photos. But if you start breaking down the design bit by bit, here's a block, what can I fill it with? It'll be easier to start implementing your stash into your layouts and your photos. So since these were originally 4x6 photos and I didn't want this big block, I trimmed them down to the important stuff. I matted them because I had room, did multiple mats here because I had a lot of room, and then wasn't happy with how much space there was left, so I put in a journaling tag. It's a great way to use your supplies. Like this thing wouldn't have been here. I could have just journaled on the thing. Nope, we journaled down here as well. But this is the hidden journaling. Adds a little bit more detail, a little bit more. Just adds a little bit more. And I think it makes the layout pop a bit more compared to my other ones. This one's quite creative, I will say. I wouldn't originally have called this a stack technique, but this particular is a good example of 2 photos and then something filling the rest of it. And it's on one piece of pattern paper that helps ground it. Grounding is very important if you feel like your layouts are missing something. Maybe it's grounding. So I'd recommend looking at your layouts, finding out what you think's missing, kind of just going through your pages. Because if you look at your old pages, you either learn from what you love, be inspired of what you've loved already, or find something new to love. So something you might have missed before. Maybe you're really good at grounding and you didn't even know because you didn't know what it was called, or you didn't realize that you were, just matching papers together. Another interesting example would be this one. Now, I had a lot of photos from my childhood that are very zoomed out, a lot of unnecessary background. I'm pretty sure in both of these there were pineapples, and I cut them out / covered them with this sticker, which is helpful. But if you have photos like these from the 90s, from the 80s that are just so zoomed out and you don't need all of that wasted space, first scan them, make sure you have digital copies in case you do need something in the background one day. And then chop them down or crop them and print them at a smaller size. This is stacked in a way that's not just photos. We use a lot of paper layers to help fill in the gaps here. These are mostly 3x4 cards, a die cut frame. I don't know what this one is. This one's a 6x6 paper. And they're kind of floating in this case. They're quite floaty, but we did have a ground base for them to sit on had we done some great spacing. I just found a cat hair stuck in the washi tape. But it's a little bit different than the other ones, which were quite boxy. So like bringing back this one, it really depends on what you have and what supplies you like to use. Still 3 photos and some sort of paired stacked design. These 2 especially are stacked. But as long as the elements are touching, I think it counts in my stacked idea. But this has so many different names across the internet. I think Janet pretty much calls these band designs. But I didn't want to go with such a name because a lot of time mine aren't grounded by the paper or by the photos. Sometimes it's washi tape grounding them. But like this one, I think she'd consider a band design because things are based off of that. But I do have some floating ones, so don't worry if you feel like your layouts are floating. Mine float too, it's fine. They can float like a boat, it'll be fine. Next up, I have another unconventional stack design, and this is different shaped photos again. Let me move this. Still need to do journaling on this one as well. But we have 2 4x6 and 1 4x4. Sometimes I always feel like sequins are gonna fly off my layouts because they don't look like they're glued down, but they are because it's clear adhesive. Anywho, so we have stack, stack. They're all stacked. If you turn it this way and had 1 4x4 and 2 4x6 stacked. If you turned it this way, it'd be the same thing. But you can turn it this way and have 2 4x6 and then a 4x4 stacked. The clusters don't need to move very much unless your photos indicate that. So in this case, he's looking this way in pretty much all these photos. So the arrow points this way. But if he was looking this way, I'd probably put the 4x4 over here and then the title over here in the empty space so it's pointing the same way. So those kind of little orientation tips will help you bring these layouts together. And don't forget that whatever you say goes. It's your scrapbooks. It's your catalog of your life. Everything about it is yours. I mean, they might not be you in the picture. It could be your children. It could be friends. It could be different family members. But it's your stories you're documenting, even if it's about their life. It's your viewpoint of it that needs to be captured. And however you want to do that's fine. I just hope you find that if you're paired with 3 photos next time you sit down, this is by far one of the easiest layouts to put together. 3 photos stacked takes up half the page, guys. Half the page. But if you're a heavy embellisher, maybe you want to cut these down to 4x4s if they'll fit. Then you have a little bit more of the page to work with. So it's a really personal preference for everything you do. Don't forget that. Your style, your preference, your story. And that's all that matters, is you. But I hope that you'd like to try out one of these. I think this is one of the most interesting ones. Actually, let's compare. This one I think is quite comparable to the last one I just showed you, now that I think about it. So in this case I had 2 vertical 4x6. So if I had taken this, scooched it over and moved this one down, we'd end up with something like this. So this one's almost an L shape as well. can kind of pick that up. But the stack design is something I do all the time. Almost all my layouts are stacked. It usually depends on where the third photo ends up or how the paper layers go if it turns out it's not a stacked design. But it's something I made up, so don't worry if you're Googling this and not finding anything, don't worry, it's something I made up. But plenty of people do it. They call it all sorts of things. Like I said before in the series, Janet has tons of videos of her go-to designs. Nicole Jones 911 shares a ton of design tips on her channel. There are so many great YouTubers here that you guys can get inspiration from, but I wanted to share this with you guys today for a simple idea. 2 photos, 3 photos, long journaling. There's a lot of different ideas when it comes to stack designs. And I know you guys have appreciated the layout flip-throughs during these videos as well, getting refreshers on my style, on what you used to like of my style, or something that you saw before you might have wanted to scrap lift. Lots and lots of beautiful layouts out there. So don't stop here, go watch another video, go get some more inspiration, and go scrapbook. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget I'm taking more suggestions for what we should cover in the Falling Back to Basics series in the comments down below. Clusters are coming, layering's coming, all sorts of stuff is coming. In fact, I think it might roll into the winter with how much stuff we're supposed to cover. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to stay tuned for process videos using the stack design on my channel, as well as over on my Patreon, where you can get exclusive process videos using these go-to designs and so much more. So I'll have that link down below. But thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye!